Welcome to another CEO Wisdom Pod with Jeremy Ryan Slate. Jeremy is a heavy hitter when it comes to podcasting. He helps CEOs with the most powerful public relations campaigns ever, utilizing the power of podcast guesting, which is a topic of discussion today. He's been podcasting since 2015, so that's quite early, granted that I started in 2021. Podcast Magazine, top 20 under 40, live from Newton, New Jersey, United States. I'm going to bring up the OpenAI saga as a topic for PR. We might going to talk about Elon PR, which is my favorite type of PR. We're going to talk about podcasting today. And yeah, finally, I'm not going to read your full bio, Jay. I think we're going to keep it to that. But
Okay.
Introduce yourself briefly and tell us about what you do at Command Your Brand Media.
Yeah, so my name is Jeremy Slate. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Command Your Brand, and we are a new media PR firm. It means we focus on podcasts and new media like YouTube and Rumble and things like that. And we've been in business since 2016. We've helped our clients get on thousands of different podcasts. I've also run a podcast myself called the Create Your Own Life Show since 2014. And we dive into a lot of interesting and also sometimes controversial topics to kind of find out, what the game board of life looks like so you can play it well. I'm also been married since 2015. I'm the father of two beautiful little girls and have 24 chickens here in New Jersey.
Chickens are quite popular nowadays, and they get killed by foxes, as I've heard. So, and raccoons apparently.
We don't really have that problem. I have a border collie who she's like a herding dog, so she's actually chases the foxes and stuff off the property. So we're in good shape with the right type of animal.
That's pretty cool. Let's start with at 19, I received my last rides. At 24, I almost lost my mother to a stroke. Tell us about how that shaped you.
I think for me, I kind of was just doing what the life path somebody else decided for me rather than, doing what I wanted to do with my life, because I never really explored that. I was going for my master's degree. I really intended to be a college professor. And interestingly enough, like getting my last rites didn't really change my outlook on life and didn't really change what I was looking for. And it wasn't until my mom had a stroke at 24 that made me look at a lot of what I was doing in my life and realize, like, do I want to be doing this? What do I want to be doing? And frankly, man, like you could have showed me how to sell things on Etsy. I would have done it at that point in time. I was looking for some sort of a way to do something different. And I went through a number of different things online until this started about 2012, until I finally started Command Your Brand in 2015. And, it's been a cool experience since then of really helping people.
Right. You've been quite successful with the pod so far. You mentioned controversy. I prefer contrarian over controversy. Contrarian is stuff that is right, but most people do not think it is. And it may ring as controversy because people think, oh, you're just this guy always going against the grain. But me, I'm a truth seeker before I love controversy, although I do love a good fight because I do think that it is one of the best way to grow once you have reached the top. So tell us about the controversy you engage in and why you do that for the pod.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think controversy is often the viewpoint of others, right? And like, I think a lot of the things that we talk about wasn't really controversial 10 or 15 years ago, but our world's changed dramatically. It's been kind of strange. And I'm a big believer in, politics doesn't really fix anything. I think a lot of people think that really getting political is going to change situations, and that's not really the case. But I'm a big believer of culture over politics. So we talk about a lot of things that are cultural issues, like what does it look like homeschooling your kids? What does it look like, running a business from home? What is it, what issues matter to most people nationally? We're talking about a lot of things that years ago you could have talked about, like we talk about things like abortion. We talk about things like religion. We talk about different topics that, used to be things people would discuss, but have become taboo now. And I think if you're going to play the game of life correctly, you have to know what the game board looks like. You have to know, what these different things are that are out there so you can make the right decisions. I'm a big believer in, I'm going to totally butcher this quote, but there was the English philosopher G.K. Chesterton talked about there only being two things to talk about, and those being politics and religion. And I think often, we're told those are the two things you avoid. But if you don't talk about those subjects, then we really have kind of a high level understanding rather than exactly on the ground understanding what's happening in our world. So we dive into a lot of issues that matter, man.
Yeah, and all of these topics do not feel controversial for me. Maybe that is because I'm a contrarian. Who's the podcast audience? Who listens to your pod?
So I'd say it's we're mainly male because we're over 70% of our listeners are male. We are the age range we're in, we're like 25 to 45 is about where we are. And those are the main people. A lot of people that are running businesses or in that, C-suite role, those are typically the people we have listening to us.
How do you get famous folks on the pod? I'm about to hit AI outreach campaigns, and I'm gonna hit a bunch of celebrity guests from scraping them to top podcasts like Lex Friedman, Joe Rogan, and so forth. And I believe I'm gonna convert at least 2 to 5% of them with these campaigns. How do you roll on your side?
I think the big part of it is knowing who to reach out to. I think that's the hardest part. Most people don't reach out to, the right communication line. Like they'll reach out to like a general mailbox on a website or things like that. So there's a couple of different places you want to start. Like I always start with a spreadsheet first to be able to track everything. A lot of people don't start with that and then can't figure out their follow-up. So first step is getting the right spreadsheet. And then there's a couple different things that I use to find contact information. The first being I haven't used this in a number of years, but it used to be a great product, was contactanyscelebrity.com. Is a really great way to get contact information for different people that may be well known. I've also used IMDb, their like paid version. IMDb Pro has a really good way, has a really good list of contacts for like people's publicists and managers and people like that. And then another tool that we use is hunter.io. And you can kind of get the idea of like what email address formats look like at different websites, and ones that can be scraped can be found. So like that's kind of the part of it as well. But then also understanding the hierarchy. A lot of people don't understand the hierarchy. Like number one, if you can get in touch with the person, you're going to have the most success. Outside of that is their assistant. Then outside of that is their publicist or their PR person. Once you get out to like a publisher, or you get out to like their speaker agency, like those are people that aren't going to help you. In fact, speaker agents think that they should be getting paid in order to book an interview, because they equate an interview to a stage, and that's what speaker bookers do. So that's not somebody that's really going to help you. So if you can find the right communication line, you can find the right way to organize, and you can find the right person to reach out to, you're going to have quite a bit of success.
And what's that first one? Celebrity.com? I don't believe that.
Contactanyscelebrity.com. They have a
Contact
pretty
any
good
celebrity.
offer. I think it's like $37 a month, but I think if you pay $297 for the year, I think they give you a little bit of a better rate. But I've gotten probably 25 like really well-known celebrities from using that site.
Why are you so ripped? What's your daily routine on the fitness level, and how does that intertwine with your founder CEO performances?
I've been a competitive powerlifter since I was in my 20s, and I was a wrestler in school, so like fitness has always been a big part of my life. And like I'm 5'6", but I was at my peak 190 pounds, deadlifting 635, squatting 705, and benching 455. But I was doing like 6,000 calories a day. I've done a routine called the Max OT. There's a site out there. It's a free program, ast-ss.com. It actually takes you through the 12-week program. I've done that for, gosh, since I was 14. So I'm closing on 37. So I've done the same program for a lot of years, and it's helped me to get, really, really, really strong. So I've done that for years. I will tell you, like, I'm only 160 pounds now, and I'm not pushing weights like I was pushing, because my calorie intake is very dramatically, because I was doing like 6,500 calories a day at my peak. Most of that was, it's interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, you got to up your protein, but it's actually, when you're trying to get strong like that, it's actually a heavy carb loading thing. So I was very carbohydrate heavy. And the difficult thing about that, man, is like, number one, like if you're not wearing like sliding shorts, like to keep your thighs from rubbing, good luck going to a theme park or anything like that. So that was like kind of a big part of it. And you can't fit in any normal person clothes. So like I couldn't buy nice suits and things like that. So now, in my late 30s, I'm about 160 pounds. I can wear nice suits and things like that. And it's really just the calorie deficit. I do the same program, but the calorie deficit is what's actually changed the body size.
Interesting. I'm 150 right now. I'm 5'8". I have a Spartan Ultra this week. So that's my ultra endurance career. I don't want to sacrifice that. And when I don't train for anything, I train for MMA. I've been doing Muay Thai since pretty much forever. It's the most fun thing ever. I want to bodybuild to 200 in the next year. So 150 to 200, 5'8" frame. What do you recommend that I do?
So for me, like number one, I check out that program I mentioned, because what you do is your workouts are 35 minutes and under, which is a big thing, because you got to think about, there's two basic processes in your body. There's anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is the process of things growing. Catabolism is the process of things breaking down. So your body can only stay in anabolism when you're working out for a period of like 40 minutes or so, or 60 minutes. It's kind of like your window. So if you can keep your workout windows under 35 minutes, you're going to stay anabolic for that time period. The other thing that is a really big deal about that as well is I'm only doing 8 to 10 working sets per workout. So, and for those working sets, I'm doing at least 4, but no more than 6 reps, and you're doing 80% of your max. So because of that, you're moving a lot of weight, and you're creating a lot of density. And for me, that was one of the best ways to put on good weight, but also stay lean too, because when you're trying to get that much work in a period of time, you're keeping up your basal metabolic rate, right? So your body is also burning a lot of fat like that as well. The other thing I would say is take a look at your 3 main ratios, meaning what's your ratio of fat to protein to carbs. Most people don't get enough fat, which is a big deal. But also the thing people don't really get enough of, especially when they're trying to grow, is carbs. So a lot of times your carbs to protein is going to be 3 to 1. So if you can keep that sort of a ratio up and keep your calorie number up with eating every 2 hours, you're gonna be in good shape, man. Those are the things I would focus on.
Let's talk a bit about PR, which is your focus nowadays. Let's start with the OpenAI event. So basically what happened this weekend, not sure when this podcast will be published, but yeah, it might be published a couple of weeks after, and these events will look as late, but the advice should be perennial at this point of time. Sam Altman was basically fired from OpenAI, from his board of director, including Ilya Suits, including 3 other folks. And yeah, basically all the OpenAI team wants to leave now. Sam has been rehired by Microsoft, which is weird. And yeah, it's been a PR catastrophe, in my opinion. It was a very dumb move. They probably lost billions in a couple of days and slowed down the roadmap that was headed to the sky. So what do you have to say in terms of that coup, which was attempted, and how it could have been better executed from a PR standpoint?
Well, I'd say the number one thing I was looking at, just as somebody watching this, I think this happened like Friday afternoon or Saturday, somewhere around that time period. And when you have something big happening like that, the number one thing you have to do is fill the void, meaning get a detailed story out there from your corporate communications department of exactly what happened. And the biggest problem was this happened and nobody talked about why. Like there was hearsay of, oh, he lied to the board or this or that, but there was no succinct from the company what's happening, because then you should have a company executive going on, every major news program talking about, in step, this is what we did. But the really big problem is it seemed disorganized. It seemed like, like they didn't really have a plan of where they were going with it. And I think that is the number one thing that is going to hurt your valuation. It's going to hurt your customer base. Is if people don't have certainty in what's happening, you're harming yourself. So you need to, number one, when you're going to take an action like that, fill the void. Okay, we got rid of Sam for this reason. This is the plan we're going to take, and this is where we're going to go. But instead, I don't. Have you heard anything more about this? Where I haven't heard even a succinct statement from the company of like why it's even occurred. Like that void is still out there and still filling itself. We're recording this on a Monday, and I know Sam has already gotten hired at Microsoft, so he's already handled himself. But OpenAI has kind of done a terrible job in even filling the void. And I think it's just kind of like, what is going on there? Like they have the new CEO now that they've picked up from, oh gosh, what company was that? Did you see what company was they picked that up from?
Well, first it's super chaotic. They went with Myra, which is a co-founder. She's amazing, and to me, they tarnished her reputation because they made her part of the coup and forced the CEO role on her, which is terrible. After that, they were Mira thought of bringing back Sam as a CEO. So again, super chaotic. And now they brought the ex-CEO of Twitch as the interim CEO. And this guy's like, yeah, we're going to slow down AI, which is terrible. Slowness is dumb. It's just delaying the inevitable. Anyway, so that's the latest events.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I feel like number one, like why okay, if the accusation that he lied to the board is true, because once again, that's hearsay. It's not a statement from the company, but it's what we've seen on Twitter and other places. Then why would you bring back into the company somebody you don't feel like you can trust? And I think at the same time, Sam Altman's been one of the major voices we've heard testifying to Congress, doing a lot of different things. Like he's a lot bigger face than to be dumped the way he was dumped. So I think it really makes them on the face of things look really bad, especially without a detailed action plan where they don't have a company rep going on other media and talking about it. Like this should have been immediate. What I think they were thinking they could do is we're going to do this. This is something you often happen is news stories that companies or governments or whatever don't want people to see are usually released at the end of the day on Friday because they hope that nobody's going to see it. But this is such a big story. Dumping it on a Friday didn't bury it. And I think the problem is they have no direction and people can see that.
Yeah, bottom line, so dumb, so dumb. Anyway, and this is, I mean, one of my main lessons here, which I outlined on my Twitter, is that, yeah, scientists and scholars are not business people, they just don't have a clue. They're so narrow focused on what they do, which is most of the board that took that decision, and you can be aiming for the stars with AGI, but you still are restrained by a dumb system, which is a board, which dates back from the 50s, and obviously still it doesn't apply to a company. And then you try to save the world by being a nonprofit, but yeah, just restraining. A wild horse like Sam Altman cannot be restrained, let him have all of his company. You can't just have one, he's not a godly being for sure, but like he's a maverick, and you can restrain a maverick. I don't think he tried to intentionally lie, but he's like an octopus. He needs to have multiple companies to have his vision come to life. I want to do a rapid fire with you with many
Sure.
topics that I saw on your Insta. So first, what are your thoughts on the Ukraine and Russian war? What are the new updates? Do you think it's going to resolve? What's up with that?
Well, I think one of the difficult things about that is people don't understand kind of the backstory about that. I feel bad for Ukraine in a lot of ways. I do have a lot of friends in Ukraine. I did a keynote there in 2019. But the U.S. government since 2009, our State Department has actually been involved in, basically trying to get Ukraine into the U.S. sphere of influence. And then you have Russia trying to get the Ukraine into their sphere of influence, right? Because it's typically been a Russian satellite. So what's really happened is Ukraine's gotten stuck in the middle here. And, they've listened to NATO and the US and a lot of other countries that have said, hey, we're going to support you. We're going to bring you into NATO. We're going to help you. And then Russia says, well, if you bring them into NATO, that's an act of war. So then, you have Russia then invade the country. They don't get into NATO like they said they were going to. The only real country funding it, sure, there's been other European countries funding it, but the main funding is coming from the US. The taxpayers, frankly, I don't think have a big appetite for this. And with what's happening now in the Middle East, it kind of feels like the forgotten war. And if you look at, I think it was Zelensky, who was the Minister of Defense, was saying that the war was a stalemate, and there has been a big head to head with him and Zelensky on what's happening in Ukraine. So I think right now we're kind of trying to figure out, is this the next forever war, or have we reached the end of this? And I think in the US, a lot of appetite has been lost for this because now all the attention has gone to what's happening in Israel.
Right. And what is your take on these events? Do you think they're going to resolve anytime soon? And what would the future look like for this conflict? A never-ending war, or something that eventually comes to a stop?
That's tough, man, because my opinion 6 months ago is this thing was going to resolve quickly. My opinion a year ago was this thing was going to resolve quickly because most of the funding comes from the US. And I've been surprised to see it still going at this point. So I thought this would have been over by now just because it's mainly US funding supporting it. And there's, it's sad. There's been a lot of death involved with it. But it just seems like at this point, it keeps going on. I really don't see it going much more past the first of the year. I really don't at this point in time. And there's going to have to be some sort of negotiations of, what happens to, Odessa and areas like that in Ukraine. Like, are they now Russian possessions? Because we're going to have to figure out what to do. That's really what it comes down to. So what does it mean for the future? I do think The president has already canceled the 2024 elections in Ukraine. So I think there's also going to be a little bit of a government shakeup there as well. Because, it's hard to have somebody in power that isn't winning.
What about it? Afghanistan? Seems that this has lasted forever, like why
Yeah,
would Ukraine not last that long? Because it seems to me that once you deploy a war, it's so tough to unveil and bring back your pieces back home. It seems that you're bringing complex stuff. You're deploying chaos quite literally, and then you can't really repair the broken pieces that easily. It seems to me that every time we engage in a war, it's a net loss for pretty much everyone,
I
unless
agree.
maybe a couple of players, aka BlackRock and folks that do invest in these wars. So your thoughts on
But
that?
I think that's the major problem too, is you look at government contractors are making so much damn money right now. Like they love this stuff. And if you look at it too, even through the Second World War, banks fund both sides of it, man, because they're making money. So I think it's when the money dries up is when the war stops, right? And I think that's what happens. If there's been talk in Congress about not continuing to fund Ukraine, so to me, that's when it stops, because the government contractors stop making money. What they've been doing is sending out a lot of decommissioned jets and things like that, because then that allows these contractors like Lockheed and Boeing and things like that to start building new stuff. So that's what it comes down to, man, is when the money dries up is when the war stops. And like you had mentioned in Afghanistan, they just kept funding that thing forever because they thought they could nation build.
But then what are the alternatives, right? I mean, physical wars, they're getting older and older. I think the wars
Mm-hmm.
will be fought more cyber-wise. There will still
I
be
agree.
some cyber businesses that will get paid on the back of that, but at least we're not going to see violence and human casualty and us coming back to the dark ages. Your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. We actually just did an episode on this recently. I interviewed a guy. The company's called West Communications, and they were looking at cyber warfare. And if you look at it, the way things would work previously, right? If you're going to invade a country, you'd take out their communications or you do whatever. Like now, they have a lot of latent things that are in different computer systems that they can just turn stuff on. And that's what even he was talking about, looking at the conflict possibly coming up in Taiwan. For all we know, the Chinese government's been seeding things for years in U.S. systems, and when they decide to, go after Taiwan, they'll just turn on all the code they have out there. And I think that's the biggest issue: is you don't realize how much battlefield tech runs on Wi-Fi, which was not the case 50 years ago, right? Like it's targeting systems, it's mapping systems, it's communication systems. They're all built on Wi-Fi, and that's why even when Musk was talking about not using Starlink, and not allowing Starlink to be used in Ukraine anymore, that is a huge deal, because of you look at so much of their tech is based off of that. We've gone so computerized, and our systems aren't secure enough. Like that is a major problem. And unless we either go back to more of an analog system or we get better security, like we're just sitting ducks here a lot of times.
What are your top goals for 2024?
Top goals for 2024. I want to get to 1 million subs on YouTube, man. That's been a big thing. Is we're at 22,000 now. We doubled in size from last year. We had an additional 10,000, but we're working on really doubling down on what works. So that's one big thing. Another big thing is we rolled out a podcast production program. So we're really working on filling that up and getting that program moving. And we're really focusing on courses and getting our education out there. So it's, for me, those are the things I'm focusing on. You can only focus on so many, or it's gonna drive you a little too thin.
Will you vote Trump?
What's that?
Will you vote Trump?
It depends, man. Like I really like Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's a great candidate. But I don't see him getting the nomination. If it comes down to Trump and Biden, I'm going to vote for Trump.
Seems that Trump, that as more time advances, the less ridiculed he looks. Trump's a shaker, and I think people sometimes prefer a shaker versus someone that just encourages the status quo. I think it's a natural balance of times. We've got like someone like Joe that is more on the conservative side, and then the pendulum goes back the other side because people don't see any change. I don't think Trump did that bad, surprisingly, in his last presidency. I also like Vivek mostly because he's from the corporate world. I don't believe in politician schmucks running an organization that is a country, and they don't have any corporate experience. I do believe in the value of capitalism and in the virtue of running businesses. But yeah, Trump is still the good old Trump, explosive and somewhat controversial. So let's see. Where can people find out more about you, James?
Yeah, they can check me out over at commandyourbrand.com or jeremyryanslate.com, and they can find the links to everything we're doing over there.